priest father? So that is a really good question, because oftentimes people may look at priests and be like, well, you don't have any kids. How is that possible? Why do we call you father? So father here kind of designates the fact of the role that they play on earth to be representative of God the Father here on earth, and the care that is oftentimes placed on priests for the care of souls. And I also think that as we see throughout history, like to be real and to be honest, there's a lot of father issues. I think when we look at our life and if we look at different things that are present, especially families, fathers are often designated as people who are aloof, who are not really part of the family, who sometimes don't really show the love and care that they should have for their spouse or for their kids. And there's a lot of times that fathers in this world fall short. And so it's a greater impetus and greater kind of movement to say that, fathers here on earth, biological and even priests, we should really root ourselves and get our strength from God the Father, who is absolute love, who absolutely cares for us, who wants to bring us into a deeper faith and love and relationship with Him. And so part of the reasons why I believe priests are called father is just to be that light. And unfortunately, priests a lot of times fail in that too. And so the necessity to pray for priests to be really good fathers and to care for their children and their spiritual children. And sometimes people also ask me like, oh, Father Kurt, like how many kids do you have? And I'm currently at a high school. So I say like, well, I have 900. And I really believe that, because it's not just a physical, biological fatherhood that we exemplify, but also a spiritual fatherhood. Why do Catholics go to Mass every Sunday? So that comes from the commandments, right? Keep holy the Sabbath. And so the way that we honor and keep holy the Sabbath is by encountering God and visiting His home. On a little more practical level, how many of you would say that you have a best friend, right? How many of you guys have best friends? Good, right? So you guys have best friends. And so what happens if I were to say, how many times do you visit your best friend? Or how many times do you ever visit their house? If one of you were to say, hey, I don't ever visit my best friend, I don't ever visit his house or her house, we don't hang out at all, how many of you would start to question from that person whether they truly have a best friend or not, right? It's true. There's not, you can't have an imaginary best friend or a best friend that you have out there that you don't even talk to or spend time with or whatnot, right? So the same thing with God, right? If we truly say we love God and want to follow Him, but we never go visit His house or talk to Him or encounter Him, as He says, I'm in the flesh and in the Eucharist, then it might start to question how faithful I am. And so Catholics go to Mass every Sunday so that we get that spiritual strength and that food from this encounter with our relationship with God, so that we can then go through our rest of our week being able to live our life to the fullest. So it's like our spiritual oxygen of the day. It's like our spiritual nourishment. Even on a level of basic food, do you know that if you go without say you starve yourself and you don't eat anything for I think it's 3 days, 3 or 4 days? Yeah, week without food, right? You what happens to your body? You die, right? You die. And so the thing about it is that same thing with with your soul. If you're not receiving the food and nourishment that God says, I'm giving you at Mass, our soul dies. And we're just like the Walking Dead. We may have the expressions and the feelings and the emotions, but we really don't have the spiritual life force that is given to us at Mass to receive His body and blood, soul, and divinity, and to pray and to encounter the living God. Okay, last question. I'm sure you guys are so relieved. So am I. All right, so why do Catholics not eat meat on Fridays in Lent? All right. So actually, fun fact, we really shouldn't be eating meat all of the Fridays during the rest of the year. Like, it's a type of sacrifice. But what had happened was in the 1960s, after Vatican II, the bishops thought that people really didn't like, it had become so commonplace. Like, when you do something all the time, it doesn't really become a sacrifice. So the bishop said, you know what? Don't worry. You don't have to eat meat on Fridays. But if you do not, if you choose to eat meat on Fridays, then you have to offer some other sacrifice instead. Well, what happened was all the Catholics just heard, hey, we don't have to eat meat on Fridays anymore. And then they forgot about the second part, which said that if you choose to eat meat on Fridays, you have to do some other sacrifice, because Fridays are the day that we remember who died on that day. Jesus, right? So he went through this great suffering out of love for us. When we choose a sacrifice such as not eating meat on Fridays in Lent, and really any other Friday during the rest of the year, we participate in that little act of sacrifice that Jesus gave for us as a response to that love. And fasting is so good because even now in like health things, right? So it's beautiful how the church works. So there's always a spiritual reason and there's like a physical reason. So if you've heard of intermittent fasting, or sometimes even having more like veggies in your diet rather than eating meat, because especially in the United States, we eat like probably way too much meat than we should. This is actually better for your overall like health and well-being. Sometimes good to sacrifice and not eat a meat or something that you really love on Fridays, so as to remember like this hunger and the fact that the rest of the world, sometimes people are starving, and to kind of like deny yourself so that you can really give of yourselves in a different way to God. And I also had another point too, but I forgot. Oh well. Okay, sorry if I talked too long.
Those are good. Do you guys have questions?
Oh, also, I have one thing to add about the meat on Fridays. So sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, since we can't eat meat on Fridays, does that mean I can like go eat sushi or like this, like, go to this expensive like fish eating place, But that kind of like negates the whole like sacrificial part. If you're going to some place that you really, really enjoy and eat, even if it's meatless, like that's not good. It really should be like a sacrifice on that day.